Welcome to the Online Zone. I'm your host, Julio Rodriguez, and we're joined in this very lovely, very spacious studio by Jonathan Fatal Error Aguiar.
Nice to be here, Julio. Thank you for having me.
Now, you may recognize John from his 5 minutes of ESPN airtime. He finished 6th in the $1,000 rebuy, is that correct?
Yep.
Good for about $120,000?
Just about.
All right. And recently in the Caesars Palace Classic, the 10K event, you finished 4th.
I did.
Another 120 grand?
Nope, 200.
Well, that just shows my research is off. I want to talk a little bit about that tournament specifically right off the bat because there was an interesting hand you played with a suited ace out of the small blind that was a little questionable for me.
Okay. Well, I believe the blinds were 80 and 160.
Correct.
And Tavad Khan was in the big blind. John Hennigan open limped under the gun +1. I think we were 7-handed. And I completed the small blind with ace-5 of clubs. Tavad checked his option. The flop came king 8-9 with 2 clubs.
Okay, at this point, I want to back up a little bit here because what are you putting Hennigan on limping there?
I don't know. It's a very strange limp by Hennigan. I really don't understand it because there weren't any real reshove stacks behind him under 20 big blinds.
Okay.
So I really don't think he had a big hand. I mean, I don't think he was limping aces or kings there. That really didn't seem to be his style. So I just figured he had like a medium to big suited connector or small to medium pocket pair. And Havad just has whatever Havad has.
Well, he's checking his option. I mean,
he'd been very aggressive though, so I pretty much ruled out him having any of his top 10%.
Okay, why not raise it out of the small blind? Just because you're out of position? Or
Yeah, it's an awful spot, and Havad's got a big stack and been playing well, and John's not going to limp fold.
Gotcha. So the flop comes with 2 clubs, king high. You check it.
Havad checks, and John checks. Now, this is kind of weird, because I'd assume that if either of them completely missed this flop, that one of them would probably bet. So I'm assuming that at least one of them has hit the flop in some way, probably a second pair, weak king, some type of gut shot, backdoor flush draw type of hand that they don't want to be bet off on the flop.
Did you ever consider betting out your flush draw?
No, not really, because I really didn't think there was a good chance of me taking it down right there on the flop. And then, I mean, I guess if I was called, I could just shove the turn, but it's really not a spot that I preferred because I might get trapped too much when John flops a set or something. Let's
say Havad bets or John bets. Do you just call, or are you going for the check raise?
If Havad bets and gets called by John, I'm gonna shove right there. And then if either one bets, it's really going to come down to just an evaluation of what their bet size is. I had 2.5 million behind, and there was only about 600K in the pot, 500K in the pot.
Okay. So the turn brings an offsuit 7, and gives you a gutter, and you still have the flush draw with the
overcard.
The overcard.
So I think at this point, there's a good chance that I have a solid 15 outs. Worst case scenario, if I get in, is I probably have 12 outs. Now, a lot of people would lead out right here again, but against 2 very aggressive players that are playing well, it makes more sense to check, because one of them is almost always going to bet. If it gets checked to John again, he's just going to bet it, because there's enough money in the pot, and it seems like me and Havad have shown that we no longer want to play this hand, we want to move on. But what happens is I check, and Havad bets, and John calls. Now it's kind of a tough spot, because I'm going to be moving in for about 1.5x pot if I shove. And I don't really just want to call and try to flush mine. And I have all sorts of outs that I'm not sure about if I hit them. So I decide to move in. I have a very tight image at the final table. So
that you did.
So I figured that I would get a lot of credit here. I could be put on 10-jack very easily. And not to mention a lot of other hands that really make sense for my range. And I really didn't think either of them had more than one pair. The only way I really thought I was getting called is if one of them had another big draw.
Well, it's kind of a squeeze in it a little bit. You're using Hennigan's call to your advantage there because Havad has to be worried about John behind him.
Right. I get the feeling that Havad folded a king in this hand, actually, because he seemed very concerned with my shove afterwards and was asking me questions. So I feel like the move worked as intended. It squeezed Havad out of the pot, and John didn't think very long. I think he maybe just had a hand like 9-10 or something, or a Jack-9 or Jack-9 suited or something that was like a pair and a gut shot, or some type of draw hand.
Or maybe like middle pair, like he just...
Right.
He limped in with a pocket pair that totally missed and thought Havad was full of it, so...
Right.
All right. So that pretty much propelled you to about 4.1 million. After I think when the break came around, you had pretty good sized stack. I want to talk about the rest of that final table. You had Adam Junglin, you had Joe Cordy. I mean, this is a pretty sick final table.
It was sick in that the positions that we drew at the final table were incredibly bad. I had Havad on my direct left. I had Adam on my direct right. And then I had, I forget who it was that I had, Dan Schreiber, Reckrell, in the 10 seat sitting next to Havad. So I was handcuffed all day long by that. And Havad and Reckrell combined were opening pretty much every single hand. And the only two players at the table that were going to be willing to do anything about it were me and Adam. And we were on their direct right and really had no moves available to us with 25 to 30 big blinds.
Now, I know you went out when I think you picked up ace-10 suited and went out against aces.
That was kind of a punt, actually, by me. I had 23 big blinds. I had been all in probably 6 or 7 hands since we came back from dinner. I came back from dinner deciding that I was just going to play for first at that point and use my image to maybe pick up a few pots real quick in the beginning before anybody realized that I had changed gears. And I did. I had about 4.5 million when the hand came up, where Mike opened from under the gun after raise folding twice already.
Michael Cameron.
I looked down at the ace-10 suit on the button, and I pushed because it was kind of automatic. But after thinking about it, he's really not raise folding there as much as he would in a normal situation, even though it's four-handed and seems incredibly standard. And I feel like it'd be more suitable to push only ace-jack or even ace-queen in that spot. But it didn't really matter. He had aces anyways. I turned a double gut shot, though, so I was drawing live.
Well, it's an interesting point because I've been talking to some sit-and-go specialists, Jonathan Little, Jonathan Jaffe, who recently went 1-2 at Foxwoods. And I was talking to him about the big blind structures, which Caesars had, where the blinds are low. Everyone's getting into this kind of push-bot automatic situation.
Yep.
And then I talked to Mike Mattisau, and he was explaining to me how a lot of the online players these days are just looking at the math and completely ignoring tournament life. So how do you feel that factors into your game? Are you willing to pass up an edge in order to value your tournament life?
Well, in certain tournament structures, you can pass up an edge because the payout structure allows for that. But the Caesars payout structure was incredibly top-heavy. It was $1 million for first, $500,000 for second, $250,000 for third, and then $200K for fourth. So I'm looking at making $50K for jumping up one spot, $300K for jumping up 2 spots, and $800K for jumping up 3 spots. That's no position to be passing up an edge. Say we were three-handed. It would be a completely different situation. I think the ace-10 suited could be a flat call or a muck there. I really wouldn't reshove it in that spot because now we're talking about the really big pay jumps. We're talking about
huge money.
Yeah, but I mean, when Mike says that we're ignoring the math, I think he's kind of not realizing that the final table payouts factor into the math. There are programs that have been designed to calculate whether or not a play is correct based on the payout structure, not based simply on your equity.
And what is that called?
There's a few tools for that. Sit-and-go power tools, I think, is one of them. There's a variety of others that have been developed, and some people develop their own little spreadsheets and stuff. That
I know a lot of online players follow the ICM.
Right. The independent chip model.
Exactly.
That's the basic math behind this, which is it takes into account the value of your individual chips. Because if you have a lot of chips, your chips are less valuable individually. If you have very few chips, your chips are more valuable individually.
Okay, well, moving from live poker, I know you live in Las Vegas.
Yep.
So this may not affect you as much as the people who commute to and from the 10K tournaments. But this UIGEA bill is really starting to scare some people. Now, I understand you have some experience working in the bank industry as well as your parents, so you may have a little bit of insight that others don't into the situation.
Well, I worked as a bank teller for a few years in high school, and one of my jobs in college, one of my internships, was doing database work for a local bank. Okay. So I really got a grasp for how complicated and large and difficult to maintain these bank systems are. Now, what the UIGEA has done is police the banks to know the source and reason for transactions. Now, this is going to be an incredibly expensive and time-consuming process, which is good for us because it gives us a lot of time to work on actions to basically get the UIGEA repealed, which is what we're all working towards, which is why you should all be joining the PPA, and which is why everybody should be donating money to the PPA, because
join
these are
the
only
PPA,
people.
write your congressman. This is bad. I don't care if you play $11 sit and goes. Get up and call somebody. All right, you can continue.
But we have a lot going for us. We have Barney Frank in charge of the Financial Services Committee, who was actually my representative from my home district when I lived back in Massachusetts.
All right.
And, I mean, just the state of the economy right now has made it such that it's going to be easy for Obama, if he wants to legitimately push through a repeal of the banking-related parts of the UIGEA that George Bush completed during his lame duck.
The midnight.
Yeah.
Okay.
The midnight deadline.
I gotta ask you, do you think that's at the top of his priority? I mean, we in the poker industry kind of live in this world where poker is number one, but do you think Obama's coming in there with that even, like, in his radar?
Well, no, this is never going to get done by Obama. This is never going to be part of his legacy to re-legalize online gambling. But what we can hope for is that Barney Frank, who is probably one of the 5 or top 10 most powerful Democrats, can simply come to him and say, listen, this is very important to me that we do this to protect the banks and to protect people's privacy, because the other big problem with this is that coding people's transactions, in addition to being incredibly difficult and expensive for the banks, is a large privacy concern to people's rights to do things without the government knowing what they're doing. Like, all your transactions, what you're buying, it'll all be categorized, and your bank will have basically a chart of what you spend your money on.
So you're basically saying that this isn't so much of a moral issue that the Republicans threw on us. This is more of an issue where if you favor big government, or if you don't favor big government, that you'll be against this, whatever your stance is on online poker.
Well, I think that there's multiple viewpoints from either side. There's a lot of lobbies that have opinions on the UIGEA one way or another. But I think what it really comes down to is what Barney Frank's whole political career has been about, which is your right to do whatever you want in the privacy of your own home. And he's been a great person to fight for us, because one of his most famous congressional sayings was, "I'm a gay left-handed Jew." You know, he understands what it's like to be a minority. He understands
the
what
ultimate
it's like to be
minority.
Yes.
All right, so doomsday scenario.
Doomsday.
Online poker is gone.
I'm moving to Europe.
You're moving to Europe. Where in Europe?
I actually loved London. If they could do something about the rain, I think I would be able to spend a lot more time there. Well, the exchange rates are a lot lower now than they were when we went over there. Almost down 25%, so it's becoming a little more attractive to move to Europe right now. But I'm going to wait till doomsday for that, I think.
December 9th, 2009, if it so happens.
What is that?
That is the deadline for these banks to kick it in gear and start enforcing some of these rules.
Oh.
But you don't see that happening, so.
Well, I don't know if we'll get there, and as we saw with the regulations, it took a lot longer than they originally planned to even get anything out there. And then when they were done, they were they're very poor regulations they don't have any teeth, and they probably won't really be able to accomplish much. But it's a concern that they've got the foothold here, that they've now begun to take away certain rights on the internet. And with the case in Kentucky and all these other things, this could be the beginning of a real maelstrom of problems.
Of other personal freedoms going away.
Other internet commerce and all sorts of other things that our government really shouldn't have their hands in.
Well, Jonathan, I'd like to thank you for coming in. Do you have any last thoughts?
Well, thank you for having me, Julio, and congratulations on your first show hosting the Online Zone for Card Player.
Thank you. I think it went well. And I'd like to thank you out there for watching the Online Zone here on Card Player TV.